Hi, I'm Joan Cartan-Hansen. Thank you for joining us in this Dialogue Web Extra. We're continuing to talk about research going on here at Idaho's major universities and about the iGEMS proposal. Let me ask you, gentlemen, how difficult is it to make that jump to commercialize that research?
Different areas of research are different in terms of the opportunities, but the hope you have is that there will be a company or at least an opportunity waiting so that you know what the trajectory is. If you have a company that's waiting for this technology, then they might help you with the patenting costs or the development costs. But if you have to start with a startup company, you've got to find some opportunity to get venture capital funding of the activity and move it into the private sector, and you'll have skin in the game in the sense that you as the inventor will have to put part of your time and a lot of your sweat equity in the beginning of the company. But we always tell students especially, and faculty as well, you're much better off if you don't decide you really want to be the CEO. You better find somebody that's good at business and has the knowledge that they need to manage a company, and you provide technical advice.
Jack, do you ever worry that the basic research can get lost in the push to have research that will lead to a product?
Yes, I think that is a concern. There's been a change over the last 20 years or so in the role of the universities. Universities originally, and in the United States in particular, are the engine of knowledge discovery. And there has been, and I think we would all agree, a good push towards more of the economic development. It has been traditional 20, 30 years ago that all you had to do was actually discover it, send it out, and it didn't matter. Now there's much more emphasis on the tech transfer side, the economic development side. And it's important to realize that certain industries, that's always been true. We're the agricultural school, and ever since we were founded, we've been developing new plant varieties. That is a form of economic development. It certainly has basic research behind it, and it moves forward. So, but there's still a concern that the pendulum could swing too far, and that we lose that, as Mark referred to it earlier, that basic research that you need to keep feeding the engine for the new ideas to come forward. And we are working through it now. It's going to be a while. There will be some changes, but I think by and large it's healthy. It's good for us. It involves more people. Involves more. The business school, for instance, is now much more important. The law school is much more important as we go through these types of exercises.
Yeah, you think about the spin-off of it's not just the science research. You've got to have the business school to have the students to be able to handle the business side of the deal, and the law students to handle the legal side of the deal. So it works around. But it's not a short-term project. It's not like the estate's going to invest $5 million in the iGEMS and we're going to get our $10 million and 40 new jobs or 400 new jobs next year. It's a long-term project.
Yeah. Although that did happen in Utah, for example, where the state did invest a large amount of money in.
Although they invested a much larger amount of money.
But if you look at the Utah model, though, I mean, they did spin off companies. They did create a lot of jobs. They did create a lot of opportunities. But when you really take a good look at the commercialization, the actual licensing revenue that came back, not as much. I think they got a lot of their big wins initially from the job creation and so forth. And it's been about a 5-year process. Now, I think there's every expectation that the second 5 years will start generating more and more licensing revenue, because you're right, Joan, it does take some time to generate those ideas, generate the technology, and then transfer that intellectual property out to the marketplace.
So as the legislature starts considering the iGEMS proposal, what sort of things would you want legislators to know about, and the public to know about, whether this is something that we should support?
Well, I can make a couple of comments. I'm sort of repeating, but not really. The whole basis for the idea of iGEM is going to be the quality of the research that's done in the universities and the focus on possible applications of that work. And if you look at the areas right now around the country, most of the money is being made in either medical or biomedical applications that are relevant to the healthcare industry. Now, there are other areas, and I'm not trying to belittle any of those, but in that case, there's a lot of interest, a lot of enthusiasm for that kind of work. And we're not, in a general sense, in Idaho, world class in very many areas in the medical related professions. And so we're playing catch up in some sense. And so the whole spectrum from research through the tech transfer aspect is going to have to be built and rebuilt, I might say, from a standpoint of the new technologies.
When I think about the iGEMs, first thing that sticks in my mind is capacity building. I mean, the real intent is for a partnership between government, industry, and universities to leverage time and resources to bring in, retain, recruit talent to the state, and work collectively together to have job creation, to create opportunities for students, create opportunities for industry to become more competitive and develop new product lines and so forth, and really develop this economic vitality within the state that thrives and feeds upon itself and continues to move the state forward in terms of the economic and societal benefits that are a result of iGEM.
And what do you think, Jack?
If I'd like to jump in, I would also like to say that we've been performing an experiment for the last year and a half. The State Board of Education did provide some funds that were relatively small, but nonetheless allowed us to invest in some of the promising technologies that we had to see if we could take that step between the laboratory and a product. And I think we have seen some success for a relatively small investment that we've had. We have a fixed vaccine that probably would have been several years out that's now in a testing stage. We have companies interested in it. We have several other things that were kind of sitting there. We couldn't make that next step. That investment's been very important for the move forward. I think we have an example that we can point to, and I think we have good examples coming out of the investments in all three universities on that. And it was a relatively small money. We were talking about $300,000 per year that we put into this, and it's only been a year and a half
And
that's been operating.
Another important thing is kind of the universities are working together on a lot of these projects, because there's not just one scientist in one spot.
Absolutely, and it's not uncommon. I can tell you already. We have a professor, Kevin Ferris, that has a University of Idaho graduate student in his lab, and that's not uncommon to see that. And I think the universities really are working well together. I think the research offices are certainly I hate to say it, but I actually like working with these two guys at the university. But we recently developed and got approved a higher ed research strategic plan that the three of us jointly worked on, and it really lays out ways that we can work together to make us in Idaho more competitive.
And in the end, it's all good for the students, for kids who are interested in becoming scientists and taking science on the road.
Absolutely.
There's a really good example in the state of Idaho. It's the Center for Advanced Energy Studies that also involves the Idaho National Laboratory. And if you look at what we've done there in collaborating and working together, including the National Lab, we've had a really good return on investment for both state and federal money in that experiment.
All right. Gentlemen, thank you for joining us. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
And thank you for joining us for this Dialogue Web Extra.